Hey everybody. I am really terrible at making movies. I just realized that I thought it was just way easier to do videos. I don't know. I had this glorious idea that I was gonna upload a video every week, and so we'll see how that goes. I think I'm better at it now. It's taken all day to figure it out. Um, I'm Sheila Bustillos. I'm your professor this semester, and I hope it's going to be a wonderful summer. I'm sure we're going to have some amazing conversations. Really, I just wanted you to get a chance to see me, and I probably read way too much about online pedagogy, and there's a lot of research out there showing that students like seeing informal videos from their professors, and so that's what these videos will be, as informal as you see them now. But I hope that I can answer your questions. I hope we can talk about and clarify some readings and course materials through these videos. They're not interactive. However, if you post to the left side of our Blackboard section under the questions for videos, then the next video I do, I will answer any questions that were posted previously that I haven't already answered. So really what I wanted to spend this time doing is talking about women's studies, multicultural women's studies. So why in the world would you have to take a course such as this? Like, who cares? Why are you here? What's the so what? So a lot of people get confused by the name. So the name itself is a Women in Gender Studies course, multicultural women's studies course. And like a lot of other disciplines, some students take that literally. If I'm taking a math class, I do math. Taking a women's studies class, I'm going to learn about women. And that's actually not what we're going to do this semester. We will interrogate gender and gender constructs, but it's not in the feminine sense as what we imagine a woman to be. We will cover masculinity, we will cover men's issues, we will cover the gamut of gender and sexuality, but we'll go way deeper in what you would probably ever imagine in the gender binary, and that means two ways of looking at things. That we have a binary of male and female, masculine, feminine, men, women. And we're going to disrupt that binary this semester and think about all genders in between and beyond and blowing up the spectrum, right? And so before I get too in-depth and before you read anything in this course and I totally just confuse you, I will talk about a little bit of the history of women's studies and what we know it as of today, which is formed into a lot of women, gender, and sexuality studies departments. So women's studies did start out as, in taking it from the perspective of what they called, what some scholars called a standpoint theory. So what that was is in the second wave feminism, which was around the in-between, give or take between who you ask, around anywhere between like the 60s and the late 80s. So we had this second wave feminism where women's studies programs actually start emerging in the 70s, and we see them on college campuses. And what that was women were writing that from a standpoint of a woman, the world looks different. We experience things differently, we communicate differently, we think differently. Actually, psychology hadn't even started doing research on women until the 60s. And they would just do research on men and say, well, then it's got to be the same for women, right? They're not different. And so in that time period, in the second wave feminism, we had women's studies programs starting to emerge. So what did they discuss? Well, they discussed a lot about interrogating women's roles in the home, in the workplace, in public and private spaces, and a lot of the scholarship evolved around that. Well, in the 80s, a lot of women called attention to these women's studies programs that they were very white and they were very class specific. So very middle class, privileged white women's perspectives. And so a lot of women of color came out actually in the early 80s and started talking about issues that women of color were going through. So women of color weren't necessarily concerned with the same issues that were coming out of the academy. And so they actually started writing about their own experiences and writing about them in a way that interrogated not only gender, but talked about race, class, ability, and all in ethnicity and all other things. Not just the fact that they were a woman, that there were all these other layers of their identity that they wanted to discuss and unpack and unfold. And that is what our discipline, so to speak, like give or take, has kind of turned into today. It goes into way more in depth in other areas, but for the sake of this class, we won't just interrogate gender, and we're not just looking at gender from a binary perspective. We're looking at this class and we will talk about issues of power and privilege in the institutions of education, of the prison systems, looking at women's roles, men's roles, how they shape our society, and how they shape the way that we view the world. Now, I will say, as this is rolling, still pull up some notes. So, we actually have women's studies in our department. We have some amazing faculty that work here. And one of them is Anna Louise Keating. And so I'm reading off of her, what she calls presuppositions. So things that we are going to come to the table in this class and assume moving into this class. So the first one that she talks about is that social injustice exists. We will not debate online in this class that there are not social injustices, because there are. There are different ways people see equality. There are different ways people see democracy, who has access to those ideas, and on what level they have access to that. And so we won't have discussions if it exists or not. We're going to discuss how we can address those problems and kind of go to the core of those issues. The other thing she talks about is our educations have been biased. So I'd like us to reflect throughout the course that a lot of the information that we have taken in can be seen as biased, is coming from a specific perspective, whether you grew up in a rural or urban town, what kind of friends you had, what music you listened to, what books you read. All of these things influence who your pastor was in high school, if you had one, who your parents are, if you had parents, who you were raised by. All of these things influence what we know. We can only understand the world in those schemas, in those boxes that we've created in our mind, how we've categorized experiences in our lives. That's the only way that we understand things. So I want us to challenge ourselves to think outside of those categories that we have in our minds and go beyond those and ask ourselves questions why we feel uncomfortable about certain material, why we feel uncomfortable and uncertain about and questioning certain things, and come from a place of vulnerability and curiosity, and not from a place of judgment and hate. So the third one she talks about is blame is not useful, but accountability is. And I love this because, we're not going to spend the whole class trying to find someone to blame. Oh, it's because of, a big buzzword in critical theory row is whiteness, right? It's because of this, white culture that we have, this white privilege culture that we have. Well, even though we can make some arguments that in certain contexts where that might be true, finding something to blame is not the problem. We need to find solutions. And so we're going to pass over the blame and be held accountable for the knowledge that we gain this semester. And we'll be held accountable to that, and holding our peers accountable for that. So we can create change and forget about just trying to blame people for problems. That's not helpful. The fourth one is we are related to all that lives. We're interconnected. We look at issues of climate change, issues that are very prevalent in the news, but that have been a thing for decades, right? We are related to everything, and we're connected to everything. And that doesn't mean just socially, but it means how we connect with the environment, how we connect to things that we hold on dearly, mementos that we save, things that we keep close to us in our lives. And we have to think about all of those things in context with the way we treat others and the way we treat ourselves. The fifth one is categories and labels shape our perception. So like I said before, our brains are biologically constructed to compartmentalize. So our brains are always constantly looking for ways in which to label people. Like looking at someone who is who appears gender ambiguous, or no, 1 second. This is Ava and Alora. This is my daughter.
Hi.
And here's Alora. Y'all say hi, and then y'all gotta go play, okay?
Hi.
Okay, y'all go play. Okay?
Bye 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 bye.
Bye.
Bye 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 bye. No, that was a short talk. Bye bye.
Okay. She's a mess. So we can only this kind of goes back to before of like what we have known and how we've come to know the world shapes everything, shapes the way that we approach things, shapes what we learn, and so these categories and labels are sometimes really important to people. Like we have to categorize people. Is that a man or a woman? I can't tell. So my brain, I've got to figure it out, right? And it becomes like suddenly our problem to get into people's personal and intimate lives. And what I'd like us to, and challenge us to do is to take these labels that we've created in society and question them, interrogate them, challenge them, disrupt them, get rid of them, keep them close, ask ourselves questions about what we should do with those labels, how important they are, and what kind of purpose that they serve in the way we interact with other people around us. And we will, of course, dive into that a lot later. She has what we call status quo stories in our society. So there are things that lift up what is normal. Some scholars call it the mythical norm, because there's not really a norm, but we're all living our lives as if there is. So we're all constantly comparing ourselves to this mythical norm, this norm that's not out there. And we're all keeping ourselves, policing our behavior to stay in check. And so she challenges us to disrupt these status quo stories and start making our own stories, which is a lot of the authors that we will read in this summer, and that's what they're doing. And I'm very excited for us to read about that. Disrupting culture, but also just disrupting ideas of masculinity, femininity. And then the last thing she has is people have a basic goodness. So wherever you come from in this class, I am treating each of you coming from a place that I know that there's basic good in you. If you're posting something and you feel like it might offend people, if we're coming from a place that's genuine and really trying to understand people's lives and the way that they live it and the way that they think, you won't ever offend anyone. But if your purpose to say things is to harm others, and then I would question that, why we feel that way. Because I don't think that we're just all mean people that are looking to, right now on social media and the internet, I think people feel like it's gotten worse than it's ever been, right? With people, calling each other out for their behavior and just being rude and hateful and having no tact. But I believe that everyone taking this class has a basic goodness. And I believe that we are all coming to this table and that we have space to respect each other. And I will believe that until I'm proved wrong. And I never have been. And I've been teaching this class since, 2013. So I know we're going to have a lot of great conversations this semester. I know we're going to learn a lot about multicultural women and gender studies in this class. We are going to question a lot about power and privilege. We are not going to talk a lot about feminism and how you should all be feminists, because I'm not going to tell you that. And you have to kind of come to these ideologies and philosophies of the way you want to live your life on your own. And, you know, I'm not here to convert anyone. I'm not here to be a spokesperson for feminism. You know, that's why I'm not even sharing with you how I identify, because I want you to come to all sorts of conclusions on your own. And that's what's going to be wonderful about this class. I look forward to chatting with you online and reading your thoughts and reading how you are, you know, constructing ideas based off the readings. And if you ever need anything, you can reach out to us. This will be the first of lots of videos. Again, these are really casual. This is start to finish, kind of like Jack Kerouac writing, you know, on the scroll. It's going to be a lot of me talking and either a lot of errors, but you know, this is a casual way. It would just be as if I was lecturing in front of you, full of errors and full of contradictions. So I hope y'all are excited about taking this class, and I look forward to seeing your thoughts online.